I was listening to the story about, it was a story of a family in Washington, and the little boy called the Bigfoot the Cowboy Man. And he had, apparently it had made an effort to steal this kid. And it hit me. My children were in that playpen behind me with nothing but a mosquito net over them. It could have crept up behind me and taken both of my children, and I wouldn't have known.
Father just got like a Mustang or something from Wyoming, okay? He had it out in the corral because he couldn't put it in the barn in the stalls with the other horses. It would kick and made all the other horses nervous. Had a Seminole Indian working the horse trying to break it every day. So they had it out in the corral. This skunk ape snuck up behind this horse and grabbed it on its hindquarters. This particular horse kicks out, jumps over the corral, runs into the pasture, to get away. At this point, the rancher's out there just blasted away with the 30-30. Skunk ape runs into the swamp.
I went up there one day after that, or 2 days after that. I went up there and sat in the silence up there, and I'm telling you, man, it was free. It was crazy. There was a crazy vibe up there still. I did what I could to kind of get things under control, but I told her, I said, you need to get off this property. I feel like no matter how strong you are, it's almost like standing in the ocean. You can't stand still without moving your feet. You're going to get knocked over eventually, no matter how strong, whatever. You can't withstand a barrage of weird spiritual energy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Paranormal Odyssey. So happy you guys could join me once again on this Friday evening. Talk a little bit of UFOs this evening. As you guys can see, I'm flying solo tonight. Our producer, Lisa, contacted me a couple hours before the show, and she had a Zoom meeting come up with the director of the film that she's going to be working on next, and it's kind of a big deal. So she wanted to be here, but she just knew that that meeting was going to run late, and work comes first. So we will see Lisa back next week. Got another Lisa on deck, though. Be talking about her here in just a minute, but before we bring her out, let's do all this fun stuff. Everybody hit that subscribe button. If you have not done so already, I sure would appreciate it. Tell your family, tell your friends, get them over here. What's wrong with them? Why haven't they subscribed yet? If you have had an encounter and would like to come on an episode, either Paranormal Odyssey Live here or one of the podcasts, which is actually where the guest that I have on tonight, y'all might have heard her first. She came on the podcast and had such great feedback from her and response. It was such a great interview that I asked her to come back and do one of these live shows. So she's backstage now. But yeah, if you guys would like to come on like she did and share your encounter, all you have to do, that first step, is shoot me an email. Send it to Wayne at paranormalworldproductions.com. Still doing the Bigfoot stuff with Manimal Research. I'm the founder and president of Manimal. We got that group up on Facebook. Got some news about it coming up too next weekend. One of our members, Kevin, and myself are going to be going down to Alabama for an investigation. So looking forward to that. You guys have any questions tonight for Dr. Lisa Thompson? Feel free to shoot those in. She is expecting them. She knows that they might come and she's ready for them. But as always, guys, if you do have a question, especially since it's just me tonight, make it easier on me if you will put those questions in all caps. And like always, guys, if I don't ask the question, it's because I just missed it. It's nothing on purpose, just didn't see it. So if a little bit of time goes by and I don't ask it, just type it again. But just please put it in all caps. Makes it a little bit easier. And lastly, ask everybody to head over to paranormalworldproductions.com. Check out our website. Not only you can not only find this show, Paranormal Odyssey, but Brian's other shows, Sasquatch Odyssey and True Crime Odyssey. Go check out the merch page too, and pick up a Paranormal Odyssey shirt, or 2, or 3, or 10. Yeah, please show some support for these shows. All 3 of them, we really would appreciate it. All right. As I was saying, got a great one in store for you guys today. But before we get there, I was witness to something earlier. Is a few days ago. I was actually witness to a jailbreak. And I was actually able to snap a picture. So this is the first time I'm going to be sharing this picture with anybody. So maybe it won't get me in trouble, but I witnessed this prisoner escaping from jail. Luckily, I was able to grab her before she got too far. But that's my Scarlet, as most of y'all know, and got her bed, all her mattress, all the way down, as you're supposed to do as they get older in that toddler stage. But now she is figuring out a way to escape. So Jordan and I are running ragged trying to contain her. But yeah, I thought that was a funny picture, so I wanted to share it. She's a mess. All right, guys. As I was saying, got Dr. Lisa Thompson, Galactic Ambassador is, I guess, one of her titles. I'm not sure about that, but she's going to come on and explain that to you, and a lot of other stuff that she's got going on. And bless her heart, she lives in just a terrible part of the world, and it's such a struggle out there on the big island of Hawaii that she needs an escape every once in a while. So she calls on the UFOs. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Dr. Lisa Thompson on. Lisa, how
Hi, Wayne.
are you hanging in out there in that terrible part of the world that you're in?
It is hard. You're right.
Well, thank you very much, ma'am, for taking the time to come and hang out again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always happy to be here with you. And my favorite topic, UFOs and ETs and
Awesome.
Squatch.
Yeah, that's right. We did cover some Sasquatch when we spoke the first time. It's very, very cool. I think we're going to touch on that tonight. I'd let the cat out of the bag a little bit. You say that Bigfoot they come from outer space, right?
Yeah, they are interdimensional beings. So
We got a lot of people that are going to be interested in hearing about that. But before we get there, Lisa, if you would tell everybody how you got your start in this field.
yeah, I would love to. So I grew up in an esoteric metaphysical household, very different than a lot of people, where we went to a spiritual school of enlightenment, very similar to the ancient mystery schools of the East, where we were learning how to expand our consciousness, go into higher dimensions, and really connect with other worldly beings and other dimensional beings, and really create our reality. So my first spacecraft, conscious memory of being taken in a spacecraft was when I was 15 years old. Now, it turns out I had been taken many times before that, but this was the first time that I got to come back and remember the experience. So what happened was I was living in Yelm, Washington, outside of Olympia, Washington, near Mount Rainier. And my mom and I lived on 20 acres. And it was at nighttime. And I somehow ended up in this craft. I don't know how I got into the craft, but I remember being in the craft with my ET guide. Now, when I was picked up, I wasn't scared at all. He was very human looking and he felt very familiar, like I had met him before. And so what I remember is flying through space, and the spacecraft was just a smaller 2-person shuttlecraft. And what I remember as we're flying through space, the walls were completely transparent, where you could fully see out into the darkness of space. You could see the stars. And then as we were passing through different gas layers, you could see the beautiful colors. So I don't know if you've seen some of the images coming from the James Webb Telescope and just how beautiful some of those nebulas and galaxies are. It was very much like that. So we finally arrived to where we were going. And when we got there, I asked him, okay, where are we? Where did we land? And he said that we were inside of Io, Jupiter's moon Io. And at the time, I didn't think anything, like I wasn't thinking that was weird for some reason. And then he starts touring me around what looked like a hospital scenario. So I could see different Earth humans in these rooms. The doors were wide open and they were being examined, not in a scary probing way at all, but just being examined like a doctor's office. And so my next question to my guide was, you know, everyone looks so human. Are you human? Are these people in the rooms human? So his answer was that we were human. However, their group, they were not human. They were humanoid, but they disguised themselves to look human so they didn't scare us, those of us who had been brought there. So then my next question to him was, well, why are we here? And why specifically, like, why am I here? And this is back in 1988. What he said was that we had been chosen that to be tested to see if something happened to the Earth, if we could live in an environment similar to that or, you know, something similar. And at the time, we were still in the Cold War. We were on the verge of World War III. You know, nuclear threat was pervasive. And so there was a real actual timeline where the Earth really could have been destroyed. So at the end of the tour, I was always a very curious child, and I loved animals, obsessed with animals, and the weirder, the better for me. And so I asked him if I could see what he really looked like, because I didn't think that I would be afraid. So he changes form, and he ends up being about 7 feet tall. He had pure white skin, big dark eyes, and long red hair. And he had what looked like triads tattooed on his cheeks. So like a very big, extreme looking humanoid kind of figure. And if you saw that in your dream, or even if it was coming down the road, walking towards you, likely you would go the other way. And so I could understand why they use some kind of disguise, holographic kind of disguise. But again, these were completely benevolent beings. You know, they were there to help us, not hurt us. And there was this familiarity that I didn't understand until later in my life, when I realized, oh, because I have been with them multiple times throughout my childhood. So then I come back home, and I remember laying in my bed thinking, okay, that's the weirdest dream I've ever had. And so for months, I really thought it was just a dream. And fast forward, we had moved to a different house, because I remember sitting in a different bedroom reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. Again, late 80s. And Whitley's book is about his experiences being taken by the gray aliens. And for him, it was a really scary experience at that time. At the end of the book, he's interviewing different people that had been taken by gray aliens. But there was one guy that had a completely different story than the others. And he was telling Whitley that he was told he was one of the chosen ones and taken to a moon of Jupiter. And then Whitley made a little side comment, kind of sarcastically, I hope it isn't Io. And when I read that, I had head to toe chills. Tears started coming down my face. And so for me, that was my body's way of telling me, okay, that was not a dream, that was a real experience. Now, back to me telling you about my mom and I being in the Spiritual School of Enlightenment. It was a very high profile school in the late 80s, so much so that there were CIA operatives and high government officials that had infiltrated the school to spy on what we were learning there. And some of those people actually became real students. So one of the people that became a real student happened to be very high government, or he had formerly been high government. He knew about the different alien races that our government knows about and works with. So when I told my mom about this experience, she was like, well, let me introduce you to this guy. So I told him my story, and he didn't know the particular race that I had been taken by. However, he was like, you know, there are a lot of races out there. We don't know them all, but you had a real experience. And so at that point, I'm 16, having it validated by someone that was an authority figure from the government was huge for planting the seed for the work that I do now as a Galactic ambassador. And so from that, I did go about having a normal life, really mainstream careers. And so it's only been in the last few years that I have really gone deep into my knowingness of being a starseed and my connection with my Arcturian family. And in the last year, I've actually started channeling my Arcturians and other ET beings as well. So that's how it started.
Yeah, and those of you that heard the podcast, that story is going to sound familiar. And as I said before, that's the most fascinating firsthand UFO encounter I've ever heard. Not firsthand from a person that experienced it. That's part of the reason I wanted you to come on and share it on here. A couple of questions,
Yes.
just for the audience. What is your doctorate, your PhD? What is it in, and exactly what is a galactic ambassador?
Okay, so my PhD, I went to the University of Chicago, and my degree is in evolutionary biology, and specifically in zoology, marine biology, functional morphology. So when I was in school, University of Chicago was the #1 school for evolutionary biology. So I'm not just going to some podunk school. And I also had a joint position at the Field Museum of Natural History. And so I do come from a very pedigreed background, mainstream pedigreed background, but that made it even harder for me to have the real experiences I had. And then I would tell my science friends and they thought I was crazy. So, it didn't match up very well. And then in terms of being a galactic ambassador, so what I have realized over the last couple of years is that one of my main purposes for being here in this Earth life of Lisa is to help spread the message of love and unity, to help change the fear-based narrative of the government, media, and Hollywood that has been pervasive since, maybe the 40s, when major shutdown of information started happening after the Roswell crash and other similar crashes. So,
Okay.
as a galactic ambassador, I'm here to share the message, but then also part of that is actually being an open channel to these extraterrestrial higher dimensional beings where they are allowed to share their message directly through me using whatever vocabulary I might have, but I step out of the way and they're coming through sharing their beautiful messages.
And obviously, you had to have been chosen for that. There's not a place where I can't go online and put in an application to be a galactic ambassador, right?
Actually, if anyone has an open heart and an open mind, anyone can be a galactic ambassador.
So, how would one go about doing that?
Well, and so one of the things that I do besides leading my UFO tours is I'm a regression therapist. I call it now parallel life regression instead of past life regression. But I'm able to help people remember who they truly are and where they really come from, what their purpose is, and I help connect them to their galactic family and guides. And so when they really open that connection up, then right there, they become a galactic ambassador if they choose to.
Oh wow. Okay. Very cool. Yeah, wanted to ask something more specific about that first trip
Okay.
that you took up there. You talked about the inside of the craft being like translucent. You could see through all the beautiful
Yeah.
gases and stars and all that.
Yeah.
Were you ever curious? Did you ask how fast you might have been traveling?
That did
That's
not even pass my mind because I was just like kind of awestruck flying through space.
yeah.
And, even though I was always like very curious and scientifically minded, mechanics of things that never really interested me, except for then in grad school, I had to take fluid dynamics and aero hydrodynamics classes as part of my functional morphology degree. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's
that
just something that always, interests me. I've always been curious about it, exactly how fast these to
yeah.
get to come to Earth and pick someone up and take them out, just for a night, 8 hours. How fast they've got to be
Well,
traveling.
their physics is different than ours because they operate out in a different physical realm. So these beings likely are probably fifth dimensional beings where they have a completely different way to travel than we do in our third dimensional reality. So we're very like your daughter, we're in that very early stage of our technological evolution and understanding like the real quantum physics that's available.
Okay. You touched briefly on one of the things that you do out there and on the Big Island is you do UFO tours. You want to talk a little bit about what you do there?
Yeah, I would love to. So I I've only lived here in Hawaii for just over 2 years. We moved in December of 2020 from Washington State. And when we got here to the Big Island, number one, we ended up being in the desert on the Big Island. Big Island has 13 major climate sections of the world's climates. And so we happen to have landed in the desert, which means that we don't get a lot of rain. We have very clear skies. And we sit right under Mauna Kea volcano, which is where the major observatories are. Subaru telescopes and the other ones like that, where we have to have dark skies. So they have light ordinances where you can't have the really bright lights. And so it's like diamonds in the sky where we live. So when we got here, we realized, okay, how clear the skies were compared to cloudy Washington. Then we realized how much activity, UFO activity, and other paranormal activity is here on the Big Island, in Hawaii in general, like all the islands, but our island is the most active in terms of the volcanic activity because we pretty much constant volcano activity. And that is one of the things that attracts UFOs. Coming from Washington State, we had Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, Mount Baker, and then down to Mount Shasta in California, tons of UFO sightings. And so any kind of dormant or active volcanoes, you will see spacecraft activity.
That's so interesting. It makes so much sense because I wonder why I don't get them as many, don't hear about them here locally all that much. And, being in Hawaii and out on the West Coast where there is the mountains and volcanoes, they get more reports. They do.
Yeah,
So that makes so much sense.
they do. And I don't know if you've heard of the volcano outside of Mexico City named El Popo, or that's what it's commonly called, El Popo. So Jaime Hussein, who's an investigative journalist in Mexico, for a good 30 years, he has been researching these spacecraft coming in and out of El Popo. People have like massive amounts of video footage of seeing spacecraft enter the volcano and leave it. And it's a highly active volcano. So again, it's all around the world where there are volcanoes.
Yeah. Yeah, I interviewed, it's one of my very first interviews when I took over Paranormal Odyssey, and this literally just popped in my head. Uh, interviewed a gentleman that spent a year, and I think it was Antarctica. Yeah, and a year up there in Antarctica. He was, I think, I don't know. He was a contractor for like a plumber or electrician, something. He contracted work through this very secretive building up there, and it was rumored that if there was anywhere in the world for there to be like a transport, like a hub
Yeah.
of of people of extra terrestrial people coming in and out, where everyone is covered and every part of your skin is covered by because it's so cold. Wouldn't that
Yes.
be a great place?
Oh, it absolutely is. And there
It
is
is.
there's that's one, Antarctica and the North Pole Arctic area. Those are two of the major areas to get into and out of inner Earth. And but then we have different places around the Earth, like Mount Shasta here on the Big Island, the Aegean Sea, in the Mediterranean area. All of those have inner Earth portals, we'll say. And so there is a lot of activity coming in and out around Antarctica, but there's also evidence coming out by, some of the more of the black ops kind of things going on, of pyramid being underneath the ice and massive amounts of technology from a very ancient civilization. And so that's partly why it's so secretive down there. And there's that giant no-fly zone. And I don't know if you've heard about the airplanes that go, they're not allowed in this one area. And if they go into it, they're basically all their equipment starts going haywire. So there's like an energetic thing messing it up, just like up in Alaska with the Alaska Triangle and Bermuda Triangle. So there are a lot of anomalies going on.
Yeah, what I was doing just then, I was going back to see exactly where, and that episode I'm referring to is episode 76 of Paranormal Odyssey, and he spent a year at the South Pole.
Okay, yeah. So Antarctica, yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And as, unfortunately with climate change, as the ice is melting, it will reveal more and more things down there. So fortunately for us, if we want to know about it, but not for our Earth.
So you have knowledge that something is going on there?
I do not have direct experiential knowledge, but I have enough knowingness about the people that are coming out that do have that direct experience.
Okay.
That there's definitely something down there. Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of that, though, like here in Hawaii, we have a suspected underwater ET base off the southern part of our state. And one of the really cool things is that around our island, all sides of the island, but then some of the other islands as well, there are very common sightings of seeing the trans-medium craft coming in and out of the water. And so, and especially, the most of that is on the southern part of our island, a point called South Point. And it makes sense that, one of the best places to have a base would be in the water, really deep. And it's not just here in the Pacific. There, Lake Titicaca, the Deep Channel off Puerto Rico, Catalina Island. There are different places around the world, the Great Lakes, Russia, China. They have really deep lakes and bodies of water where bases and craft can hide out.
That's awesome. That's so interesting. So interesting.
Yeah.
I want to go ahead and let's start talking about some of these pictures.
Okay. Well, so you had asked about my Big Island UFO tours. So I do a night sky watch using advanced Gen 3 military night vision goggles. And what these goggles are able to do, they don't zoom in to the craft, but they amplify the light. And so what you can see is thousands more light points in the sky than you can see with your naked eye. So you can see every moving satellite, every airplane, every spacecraft that's out there that's in a physical third, fourth dimensional reality. And so I train people how to identify all of these different moving objects, because satellites have a very predictable behavior. Airplanes, helicopters, very predictable behavior. So once you know what that behavior is, then you can actually start seeing things that don't fit into the known.
Yeah, and that was the whole reason that me asking you to explain that a little bit was because I wanted to show some of these pictures and what exactly you're experiencing out there.
Yeah, and we see, so most of the stuff we're seeing with the goggles. However, there will be occasional times where just with my visible eyes, I will see some really amazing stuff. And this week, specifically Tuesday night, March 7th, I was driving home from a book signing, book speaking event at our local bookshop. And because I was talking about these beings and my book, I'm always asking, hey, show me that you're here with me. Just show me a sign. I'm always asking for that. And so I was thinking this all the way home, like, I want to see you. Just give me the sign. I get home I park, I walk down my driveway to get the mail, and I look across the street, and above the tree line is with my eyes, it looked like a very bright star. Okay. So this picture doesn't even do it justice because it was multi-pointed star, glowing gold, and it was like almost pulsating. Now I have a constellation app on my phone, so I got that out immediately just to rule out that it was a star or that it was Jupiter or Venus, which had been very bright in the sky. And so I ruled those out. And then I had this idea like, oh, well, it's bright enough. Let me try to photograph it. And the photograph, again, does not do it justice as to what I actually saw with my eyes. And I thought the photograph kind of sucked. But then I zoomed in to it, which is the next right there. I zoomed in and I could see, wow, this thing actually has structure to it. So it looks like a double donut shape. So I also was trying to video it. And I know we weren't able to get the video on for your show, but I do have it on my Facebook pages if anyone's interested in seeing what the video footage looks like, because it's truly amazing. This thing was spinning around and it had real movement to it, very mechanical looking kind of movement, but it was definitely not a star, not a planet. It's not an airplane. It's not a satellite.
I think looking at that picture, we would all agree with that.
Yeah, it
nothing.
was. So I was so excited when I got inside because I was also trying to call my husband from the driveway to get him to come out because I didn't want to leave it. Okay, and the other thing that I did was I'm talking to it telepathically, and I'm like, okay, so I know you're a craft, but I need you to do something for me to show me that you are a craft. So what it did, it completely dimmed out. It basically disappeared. The light shut off. And then a few seconds later, it came back on really bright again. And then it stayed on and then it shut down again for me. And then it came back on. And so then I'm videoing it and I'm like, okay, I need extra validation, even though I really didn't. But I'm like, come on, guys, show me again. And it did it 2 more times until it finally just blipped out altogether. Because I was like, I got to go in. It's really late now. And so, having that validation of, okay, it's dimming out for me. It's coming back on. There were no clouds that were covering it or anything. It wasn't anything that could be explained, by someone that is a skeptic. So then the next morning after that, actually, people were reporting that starting around 1:30 a.m. So this was taken at 8 p.m. at night, my time. So about 1:30 a.m., people who were driving home late or getting up early for work, they started seeing lenticular clouds above Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. And
I'm going to pull some of these up, and I don't know if there's any certain order you'd like me to go. I'm just going to go with the first one.
But lenticular clouds are known as spaceship clouds. Now, there is a scientific explanation for how the cloud formation is supposed to happen. But the thing is, these kinds of clouds, they're only found around very high mountain ranges. So they're extremely common in the Cascade Mountains, where I come from in Washington State, Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, etc. They can be found around the Rockies. Now, Mauna Kea, which is the mountain that you can see behind this house, that is our biggest mountain, and it's over 13,000 feet. It is a high mountain. However, Hawaii never really gets these. It's extremely rare to get these lenticular clouds. And people for these clouds stayed around from 1:30 a.m. on March 8th up to 10:30 p.m. So they stayed around for almost a 24-hour period, staying in place, changing shape a little bit. But what I understand from my galactic entities that I work with is that they do hide in these clouds. This is a perfect way for them to disguise themselves, because the people who, are mainstream or skeptical will be, oh, okay, that's just clouds. But people like me, it is a reminder for us, like, oh, they're here. This is our family. These are our guides, our friends. And like the one you're showing right there, that looks like a flying saucer, does it not?
Yes,
And
that's a beautiful cloud.
yeah, it is. And so, whether it's a cloud or a spaceship, what it does is it opens the mind up to like, oh, maybe there is something more than just this Earth reality. But I thought the timing of the clouds was just really interesting with when I actually got that video and photographic footage of the spacecraft over my neighborhood, which in my neighborhood, as I mentioned, is right below Mauna Kea and right by Mauna Loa as well.
All right, yeah, those. And tell me again what those clouds are called, because I'm gonna go online and look at some more.
Yeah, they're lenticular, Lenticular.
Lentic.
Ular.
All
Yeah,
right, yeah, they're
lenticular.
very, very pretty clouds.
Yes. And again, in Washington State, I would see them all the time over Mount Rainier. And even growing up, when I was young, I knew they were spaceships, just like, hi.
Now, we kind of teased a little bit at the beginning of the show with some Bigfoot stuff and your
Mhm.
beliefs and what Sasquatch are. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, again, I come from Washington State, which is Squatch country. And it's I know people that have seen them, that have smelled them, that have experienced them in Washington State, and then outside of Washington State. I guess growing up in the Northwest, I didn't really think that they could be in places like Texas or Oklahoma or whatever. And that show Finding Bigfoot, that kind of opened my mind to like, oh, okay, I guess they can be in other places that are forested. So I already knew like this innate, no, it's an innate knowing of like, yes, they're real, even though we don't have the physical proof or whatever. And then like, again, I'm a zoologist. And one of the things that we did in our stuff was discover new species. And so I was always really open-minded about like, we have not discovered everything because we keep discovering new fish in the ocean, new animals, even land animals we're discovering all the time. So I didn't know what Sasquatch was until later in life, where I actually, I've had a regression client who lived a life as a Squatch. And so we got to fully have her bring back that memory of what that life was like. And
Now,
so,
are you talking about April?
nope, nope. So
Okay.
April's my other friend who channels them and works with them. But no, this was actually a client who came to me for regression, past life, parallel life regression. And her first life was a non-Earth feline humanoid life in Spica. And then we went from that life to now she's a Squatch. And so she had no clue. She thought she was just going to experience normal Earth, past lives, but that's not how the session went. So I already knew or knew about the idea that Squatch is interdimensional, that they originally came from a different planet in our solar system, which is known as Maldek, Maldec. And Maldek was the planet that was in between Mars and Jupiter that is now the asteroid belt. Okay. So Squatch lived on this planet. There were other human-like beings living on this planet. But like Earth, they were very fear-based and they were constantly at war with each other. And they ended up destroying the planet. So that's, blew apart. Now it's the asteroid belt. Squatch, being interdimensional, was able to relocate to Earth. But again, they're able to move in and out of our dimension so that we can see them or not see them, experience them or not. And what came out of the session with my client was that they hide from us, or from most people anyway. They don't want to be found or known because they see Earth humans in a very similar way to the humans that were on their home planet. and they see us warring with each other, and they're afraid of being killed. And, because they're often in the forest areas, there are a lot of hunters with guns, and our mindset tends to be shoot first, ask questions later. And so it makes sense, like, why they are so evasive and really. And though, when I met my friend April, and she had these experiences with Squatch down in Texas, again, which, like, really, they're in Texas, but they're all over. And so the information that she was getting and that my client was getting, and then other stories that I've heard from other people, it's all validating each other. And these are people who do not know each other. It's not like they're trying to make up a story together. And my client, she has never read books about Squatch. She does live in Washington State, but, she's not an avid Bigfoot person like you are or I have been. So it was pure information I felt coming from her.
Okay, yeah, and I asked if it was April because you did put me in contact with April, and she and I have talked, and she's going to be coming on to share a little bit about what you talked about and her experiences, but the personal things in life that's going on right now that's got her busy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be scheduling that in the coming months.
Yeah. And April, she has a lot of really fun stories to share about them. And again, she and I, over the last couple of years, we've been piecing together more and more information from her experiences and just talking through it, and then my client, and then other sources.
Yeah. And something I don't think we talked about on this talk now, but we did talk about it previously, was you do communicate with them telepathically, correct?
Squatch, yes, they are telepathic.
And aliens
ETs as well, yes.
ET,
yeah. Pretty much anything fifth dimensional and higher, the most effective way to communicate is telepathy, because you can receive massive amounts of information more so than just words can speak, and you can share easier that way as well.
Now, is ET the term that they use and they like to be called, or
the beings that I work with don't care. Like, it's funny because I did have a colleague who I had a class that I had titled like Introduction to Aliens or something like that, and they emailed me and were like, "Don't you think it's derogatory to call them aliens? What do your beings think about that?" And I'm like, they don't care. They just like that I'm talking about them. They know it's not a derogatory term and that I don't mean it in that way at all. And so, I interchangeably call them galactic entities, extraterrestrial, higher dimensional beings, aliens. And then there are specific races that I talk about, like Arcturians, Pleiadians, Lyrans, Syrians, etc.
Yeah, and also another term that you don't like to use is abducted.
Okay, yeah. So that one, because if you think of abduction, what I think of is when I was growing up, I was scared I was going to be abducted by a person in a scary van, right? Luring me with candy. That's what. And so
Big white creeper van pulls up with candy. Yeah.
Yes. And I actually did have an experience when I was in elementary school. It wasn't a van, but it was a creepy guy pulling up, asking me if I wanted a ride. And I was like, oh no. And I ran. So when I think of abduction, for me, that's what comes up. That's the kind of charge. And so I think in our society, it does have more of that negative connotation, although it is just a word. But so what I use the term temporary detainment, or even just being taken, because, people are always returned. Now, there is some question about that, though, because there are people out there that are like, well, there are thousands of people that go missing every year that are never recovered. And they think that it's people being taken into craft that are never returned. And I do have something to say about that, which is it could be true, but if that is the case, at a spiritual level, they have a soul contract for that to happen. And maybe they're just going home. So it's not a negative thing.
Okay. Okay. Now, yeah, that does bring up a really interesting topic because people talk about people going missing. That could be a lot of things. It could
Yeah.
be taken, from something not of this planet. You
Hmm.
hear people talk about cryptids getting a hold of people, a Bigfoot or dog man or anything
Right.
like that. And what I've always heard and what I agree with is when it comes to Bigfoot, they're like people. You have the majority of us people are good. We do well, we do right by others. You got to think that Bigfoot's the same way. The majority are good. But every once in a while, us people, you have psychopaths, sociopaths, people that don't want to do good. They want to do evil. And I think maybe Bigfoot's the same way. Occasionally you run into one that's not good. And maybe that's how some of these people are disappearing. Now, my question to you is all the people that you've talked to, I know you haven't had any personal experience, but the people you've talked to, have you talked to anyone that's ever had a negative experience from from a being from beyond?
So not not a negative experience. In terms of Squatch, I remember having a couple of friends when I was a teenager, and they were teenagers, and they were big outdoors people and four wheeling out in in the big tall tree woods of Washington. And when they came across, they could smell it at first, but then they saw something, and because we oftentimes we go into fear mode just because it's a natural like flight or fight mechanism in our animalistic brain,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean it was a negative situation. And there was no aggressive activity towards them, but they saw it and they were a little scared, and so they got out of there really fast. Now I know someone else that had an experience in Washington where they were having rocks thrown at them, and um, that for them, like they were running away from the rocks. And I do have, some ideas about like that particular person or what. I mean, there are some people, we all resonate at a specific frequency. We all give off energy, and some of us are giving off more of a high vibrational love frequency. And we're going to have a very different experience with a Squatch coming from that frequency versus we're going looking and we want proof, and we're like in a lower vibrational frequency. And so again, I don't know anyone that's had a like specifically negative I mean, having rocks thrown at you could be scary, but also I know that one of the things why that behavior does happen too is because they just want you out of their territory. Like
Exactly.
they don't want to be seen or found. They just want to live in peace. Now, in terms of people who have the negative experiences with being taken by different ETs, and there are people that come back with that very fearful, like scared kind of reality. When and if they are regressed to a deep enough level to get to the actual experience that happened, because their mind typically has made up some story around what happened. But when they get to see and experience what really happened, but then also why, like what was the mechanism for them being the one to have that experience? In all the cases that I know about, they are then able to see, oh, okay, that wasn't scary. And I understand, oh, I signed up for that at the soul level contract, like with the soul level contract before I came into this earth experience. And so, because we have free will here on earth, that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things. And so, nothing can truly be done to us against our will. We now, some people forget that they have free will and that they can say no. And that's one thing that I like teaching people is that even if you are in a scary situation, if you speak out and you get your power back, no, it'll stop because you've changed that dynamic.
That's interesting. That's Yeah, I've never heard that anywhere else before. That's interesting. Now, yeah, I'm sure you've heard. I can't. The gentleman's name is escaping me. Probably the most famous abduction story ever. Travis
Travis
Wall.
Wall. Yeah.
Wall, yeah. Now he's become pretty famous because of what happened to him. A big time movie was made
Right.
about it and everything. And to hear him talk, it wasn't that pleasant.
Well,
Of
have you heard his more recent stories about
No,
him
I
then?
haven't.
Okay. So, and this is where, when you get more perspective on a situation, you start changing your tune.
Okay.
So, I have seen him more recently being interviewed about his experience. And so, what happened was that the craft that they were near was putting out such a high amount of energy that it essentially radioactively burned him. And he was taken so that they could heal his body because they did not mean for that to happen. And so now, even though, yes, at the time, like he didn't understand what had happened, but now he has more clarity around it and he understands what they were actually trying to do and why he was taken because they were trying to help him.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So again, it's just all perspective. It's like
Yeah.
we need more information.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Now, we've got a little bit of time left. Lisa, are there any more experiences that jump out at you that you would like to talk about?
So one thing I do want to touch on, just because it's come up so recently, is originally the Chinese spy balloon, and people were like, "What is it?" Well, I have a friend in Montana who lives in Billings who actually saw it with her own eyes. There was a massive amount of EMF energy coming out of that region and making people sick. Now, was it the balloon or something else? What was the balloon tracking? Because the other thing that she saw was whether it was the balloon or an object that looks like the balloon. It was a white round orb that phased out into two pieces and then came back together. Now, she is someone who regularly communicates with Syrian ETs, and that is their technology. And so, what they do, that they've explained to her, is they essentially phase out to the area they want to be in, and then they basically come back together. And that's part of how they travel. And so she saw this phasing. At the same time, the balloon was there, but it looked like it was the balloon. So again, so there might have been something more than just the Chinese spy balloon going on. Then we shoot 4 things out of the sky that are spherical objects that, one right after the other. So then my conversation with her, because she was like, those were all Syrian as well. And even if they are man-made to look like the Syrian craft, or they really are the Syrian craft, what it's doing is it's planting seeds in people's mind of, okay, what's out there. And what she was explaining to me, and I thought this was interesting, so I'm still wrapping my mind around this possibility, is that she said that they were allowing themselves to be shot out of the sky, that they sacrificed some of their craft to be shot out of the sky so that when the mothership comes, they'll be like, okay, why are you just randomly attacking us? We're not doing anything. And it starts the conversation because they want to be known. But again, we have free will. It's like the prime directive on Star Trek. They can't interfere unless there's some major reason to interfere or we're asking for them to come down and communicate. And so, again, these beings, why they're showing up to different people and showing up in different ways, is because some people like me are asking, like, show yourself, I want to see you, show yourself. It's intention. And so then they do. And again, at some point, we are going to be part of the greater Galactic Federation, the Galactic world.
Now, Lisa, in your opinion, quickly before we get out of here, why is it that the U.S. government is now starting to admit that these things are real?
I think because there's so much leaked footage and so many whistleblowers coming out of the woodworks that they can't deny it anymore. But there are also other governments like Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, Israel that are all saying, yeah, these things are real. And so there,
That's
it's
exactly what I think. Yeah.
yeah, it's pressure. And I think the ETs are pressuring them too. Because again, they want to be known. Like I mean, they are benevolent and they want to share technology with us for like free energy, for healing, things like that. And our government, and more so like the money making corporations,
Yeah.
don't want that. So there's this push and pull going on.
It's all about money, ain't it?
It
You
is.
follow these lines, follow them as far as you can go, and at the end of it is always money.
Yeah, it is.
All right, before we get out of here, Lisa, tell everybody where they can find you. You can talk about your books or anything that you want to cover real quick.
Okay. So my main website is www.drlisajthompson.com, or you can also go to mysticmanta.com. And on that website, I actually have a free 20-minute meditative journey to meet your galactic family and guides. So for those of you that are like, oh, how do I connect? You know, how do I become a galactic ambassador? That's a good start. Get that free meditation and see who comes up, who shows up for you, and what their messages are. Then I also have BigIslandUFOTours.com, and I have a podcast, Connection to the Cosmos, with Dr. Lisa Thompson on YouTube. It's on all the podcast outlets as well. And then I am on Facebook. I do have Instagram, but I'm not really active there. But I am active on Facebook, Lisa Thompson, and then I have Dr. Lisa Thompson, and I have Big Island UFO Tours.
All right. Very, very cool. Again, Lisa, thank you so very much for coming and hanging out. I learn so much from you every time I talk to you. We got to get you known to more people.
Thank
It's,
you.
it's so interesting, the stuff that you talk about. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you having me on, and whoever's watching this, thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am. You enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, guys, there you go. Like I've been saying, that the very, very interesting lady. I'm glad I got the chance to meet her and talk this little bit that we have. All right, guys, that is going to do it for this episode. Next weekend, I will be going down helping out a buddy of mine in a Sasquatch investigation down in Alabama. This has been in the works for quite a while now. I can't talk a whole lot about it. Certainly can't give any specifics, but there is a young girl that is being observed by a very large Bigfoot, and he's getting too close. This was a BFRO report at one time, but I can't get into everything. But yeah, it's going to be interesting going down there and looking into all that. So I'll be able to report on that hopefully in a couple of weeks. But yeah, guys, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for spending your Friday evening with me. As always, guys, y'all be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and I'll see you later.